All right, everybody, welcome back. This is the Horn Takes podcast. You're very rough around the edges. Texas sports talk destination. That's all we talk about. Almost. It's not all we talk about, but it's pretty much all we talk about. We'll throw in some other stuff related, sports related things. I'm your host, Sean Redfern. It is Friday. Usually we love Fridays. And I love this Friday, but it's just not my favorite is Friday, probably. I'm not going to Team Am tonight because I got to go to some graduation party. I don't get to watch any Texas baseball tonight because they got eliminated. I don't get to watch the Lady Horns try to win a Game 3 and win the College World Series because they got eliminated. We do got Super Regionals, though. Super Regionals going on right now. We'll talk about that Texas baseball team. We'll talk about that College Station Regional. We'll talk about David Pierce. Do we think David Pierce is done? We touched on it a tiny bit last week when we had Harge on the show. Hardball Harge. Always enjoy having Hardball Harge on the show. We talked about it a little bit. We'll talk about it a little bit more today. We'll obviously talk about that tough loss in the Women's College World Series Championship round. We'll talk about these Super Regionals, and I'm going to give you all my picks and maybe some reasons why. Maybe not, though. You just never know. And then I want to talk a little bit about what I feel like might be the beginning of a college coaching exodus from the college ranks. And I may be off base, but this is Horn Takes podcast, and we just that's what we do. We come up with crazy shit to talk about, and that's what we're going to do today. Texas baseball, man, we knew that this College Station Regional was going to be a tough draw for them. Louisiana, a really good team that can pitch. Texas A&M, a really good team that can pitch and can also hit the ball. Just really dangerous lineup for Texas A&M. So we knew. And when I talked to Harge last week and we talked about it, I asked him what he thought was going to happen. And he didn't really give me a prediction for the regional, but he basically spoke to the fact that the team with all the pitching is going to win this thing. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. I said it was going to be very hard for me to imagine this Texas team making it out of that regional. And I was okay with that. I think what really got me was just kind of the way they lost the game too. And for those of y'all that don't know, you win game 2 and you're in a really good position to go ahead and win the whole thing. Winning game 1 is obviously important. Winning game 2, if you can pull that off and just be sitting there waiting on the rest of the teams to beat up on each other for that final game, final series, possibly, that's definitely the way to be. And we also talked a little bit about, would we see the team that caught fire towards the end of the season, the end of the regular season in the Big 12, or would we see the team that went into the Big 12 tournament and just really didn't look good? They kind of struggled at the plate. Really, the top of the lineup did not look great in that Big 12 tournament. And they hit the ball all right, I guess, in this regional down in College Station. But that was the question. Are we going to see that team that was busting home runs left and right, that team where the pitching settled in pretty good, or were we going to see what we saw at the Big 12 tournament? And I think what we saw, to me, looked a whole lot more like the latter than it did the former. I thought the pitching was actually pretty good in that regional. They just couldn't get the ball. I mean, let me back up. The game they got eliminated in, the pitching was not great late in the game, but all the starting pitching was pretty good in the College Station Regional. So they didn't get out pitched, man. They got out offensed, which is really odd because this is one of the more potent offensive teams that the Texas Longhorns have had under David Pierce. They start out the deal with a really, really nice 12-5 win over Louisiana. They hit 357 as a team in that game. They were knocking the ball around. Kimball Schuessler back at Texas A&M. For those of you that don't know, he was a transfer from Texas A&M. That's where he started his career. He went 3 for 4, 2 doubles, 2 bases, two walks, scored 3 runs. He was kind of the offensive catalyst in that 12-5 win over Louisiana. Grubbs came in, had a decent 5 innings. We talked about it a lot down the stretch. The pitching, not spectacular. You would love to see your starters be able to give you 6-7 innings. It doesn't always work out that way, and that's okay. But you got to be able to give them at least half the game. And over the course of the last few weeks of the regular season, the pitching had done that. So that's what you're going to get out of this pitching staff, and that's what we got. He had a really good outing. O'Hara and Duplantier came in and wrapped it up. And so big win. You got to get game 1, right? Not very many. I forgot what the statistics show. I think it's like, it is bad. It is almost impossible to lose game 1 and play yourself all, because you got to win like 4 or 5 straight games. I think if you lose game 1, and it's just tough to do that in baseball. Then they go into game 2 against A&M, and this to me was the nut punch game that they just could not bounce back from on Sunday. They just couldn't recover from it. They had, this game, folks, good pitching, tight game. It was 1-0, then 1-1, 2-2. It was a close, hard fought, just really good game. The pitching, man, LeBaron Johnson Jr. was outstanding in this game. Held that really potent Texas A&M offense at bay for a really long time. But they had one bad 8th inning in this game. The leadoff reached on a throwing error. The next batter walked. They get a fly out. They get a K, so they got 2 outs. And then another A&M hitter reaches on a throwing error, and the game's tied. And I really believe if Texas doesn't have those errors and doesn't give up that tie, then I think they go on to win that game. Of course, anything can happen. But the Texas pitching, man, really, really solid. Again, 5 innings pitched for LBJ, 2 runs during those 5 innings, 7 Ks. The bullpen came in and did their job until the 11th. And again, if you're a Texas fan, you've seen this team. They just don't have enough arms that they can depend on. This is not an LSU last year situation where you can go win the College World Series with your bullpen. They just don't have that. And so once you start to get deep into that bullpen, you just kind of know it's almost inevitable. Like you're kind of waiting for it to happen. So it ended up being a really rough game, obviously. And they just didn't put A&M away offensively on a night where A&M kind of struggled a little bit at the plate. So they couldn't make routine plays down the stretch. And man, it's just the way it got. And I know somebody's going to gripe at me about saying some of those plays were routine. I don't give a shit. Like, the hardest part about that Jalen Flores ball, that was the one that he got when it was hit up the middle. And by the way, I'm not dogging Jalen Flores. I'm just saying what happened. Very hard hit ball. I think it was like 100. It was 110 plus coming off the bat. Jalen Flores made an amazing play to stab it, knock it down, gets up and just makes and he had time. The ball comes at you 110 miles an hour. You got time. And he just came up and made a really rough throw. And he did it twice in that inning. And again, I'm not dogging on Jalen Flores. I'm just saying, if you want to win baseball games, especially close, low-scoring baseball games, you're going to have to do that at some point if you're going to make a College World Series run. You got to do those things. So they just weren't able to get it done. And it is what it is. And so as we headed into Sunday, I thought to myself, man, this is just really rough. I just, we're out of arms. We're getting close to being really out of arms. We're going to have to pitch some guys that we probably don't really want to pitch. They have not done well all season long. Just consistently kind of just haven't answered the bell when Texas needed them to answer the bell. So going into that Sunday game, I wasn't really optimistic, and I was certainly not optimistic that Texas could win a game on Sunday then win another game against A&M Sunday night, and then force a game on Monday. I had pretty much knew Texas's only shot at winning this thing was to get through games 1 and 2 undefeated. And even then, it wasn't a great shot for me. The offense struggled in this game 3 against Louisiana. The pitching obviously cracked late in the game. Another 8th inning, just absolute like defensive. Well, it wasn't even a defensive meltdown. It was just a pitching meltdown in the 8th inning this time. I thought Boogie Whitehead came in and pitched really well. 2 runs over 6 2/3, 6 Ks. But those 2 3-run bombs in the 8th inning put it away for Louisiana. Just overall thoughts on the season, man. Obviously, it was an up and down season. We have all talked about that. If you watch this team, everybody that's seen this team knows it's just been kind of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of deal. Or did I say that backwards? Is it Dr. Hyde? No, it doesn't matter. Two-faced team. They could be really good sometimes and be really bad sometimes. It seemed like when the bats were really, really hot, there'd be instances where the pitching just was really, really bad. I mean, they scored 9 runs against University of Texas Rio Grande, and 9 runs or 8 runs, which is a shit ton of runs. And they lose the game 17-8 or 17-9 because the pitching just absolutely couldn't do anything. When the pitching was really good, like we saw, I mean, I think, listen, the pitching was not great in this regional. The starting pitching even was not great, but it was good. And I would even say it was really good. And they just couldn't get any runs, man. They just couldn't get any runs across in those last 2 games. So it kind of is what it is. We said that if Texas baseball was going to make it to the College World Series, they were going to have to absolutely guerrilla ball their way into the College World Series, and they couldn't do it. Not a lot of home runs in this regional, so it is what it is. Not enough horses on the pitching staff, and I think some of the guys regressed. I think some of the guys. I mean, you look at LBJ last year versus LBJ this year, and it's just not the same dude. What you're seeing on the field on the field when he's on the mound is not the same. So the big question for Texas baseball fans and maybe fans of other baseball teams is David Pierce out. We talked about it a little last week. I tried to get Harge to give us his thoughts. He did the diplomatic thing, y'all. He did not say one way or another. And here's my take, man. Half of me is not convinced. Half of me is not convinced that David Pierce is gone. He's had 3 trips to the College World Series in 8 seasons at Texas. He almost had his 4th, and it would have been 3 in a row last season. They've only been out of the postseason 1 time since he was the head coach at Texas. And he recruits pretty well. I mean, their class last year was pretty solid, and I think right now, depending on which service you're looking at, they got the number 2 rated class. Now, we all know a lot of those guys won't ever make it to campus, so it's really hard to judge baseball classes. And in the transfer portal era and NIL era, it's probably almost as important to do well there as it is to get young players in. Guys that you can kind of build around. You got to be able to go out in the portal and pull some of these guys in that can make a big impact for you, and they have some experience. And I think that's where David Pierce kind of struggles as you talk about recruiting. He doesn't do as well out of the portal. In fact, most of the portal ads have been, I mean, I don't want to call them busts, but they haven't been huge impact guys. Now that, again, there have been some that have been really good. So, you look at a guy like Ivan Melendez, and I don't really consider him a portal guy. He was a JUCO guy. He had to quit playing JUCO baseball. He was going to go to some D1 school. That being said, he did go to Texas. So, and obviously David Pierce was a big part of that. Goes on to win the Golden Spikes, has an amazing senior year there at Texas. But yeah, man, half of me is not convinced. After all of this stuff, and we've been pretty negative towards, I mean, I wouldn't say negative. I would just say we've we've kind of called it like we've seen it on David Pierce. But even with all that stuff that's not great, I don't know, man. It would not surprise me once. It wouldn't surprise me either way. Honestly, I mean, like, I could see a tweet this afternoon that says David Pierce no longer the head coach of the University of Texas, and I wouldn't be surprised. I could also see a tweet from CDC that says David Pierce is my guy, and I really wouldn't be that surprised. But I've heard from a pretty decent source, and this guy is pretty connected. He said he's 90% sure that David Pierce will not be the coach at the University of Texas next season. I don't know. But let's say he's not. It begs the question, who's going to be the guy? Who's the replacement? I keep seeing a lot of Texas fans throwing out Schlossnagel's name and Tony Vitello's names. And, man, those two just do not seem likely to me. Like, first of all, they're both in super regionals right now. Vitello is a guy that went to Tennessee, turned that program around really quickly. I don't know. I don't know what the mystique is like. I mean, obviously the baseball program at Tennessee is not historically the baseball program at Texas, but I don't know. Like, some people, I have a hard time leaving stuff I've built. I'm that type of person. If I built it and it's good, which it is right now, they're in a super regional game right now. I don't know. I don't know that he would leave there. I mean, maybe you could money whip him. And then Schlossnagle, same type of deal, man. I don't know. He's got the buy-in of the A&M fans. He's and not that A&M baseball was terrible or anything, but he's got it going definitely in the right direction. So yeah, man, those names, that I would be shocked. I would definitely be shocked if the tweet I saw was David Pierce is out and Jim Schlossnagle has been named the new head coach at the University of Texas. And I don't think CDC is going to do a you're fired, wait a few days, or have a coaching search type deal going on and not have a coach. Like, I don't think he's going to fire David Pierce until he's got a agreement and principle deal with another head coach. And all that stuff could be happening right now, all behind the scenes. And, who the hell knows? Maybe Jim Schlossnagle and Tony Vitello have both told him no. Maybe one of them's told him yes, we'll do it once this whole season's over. I don't know. So there's the one half of me that says, man, it's just kind of it's just like, really, you're going to fire a guy that's done all those things? But the other half of me knows these things. Texas is absolutely 100% not ready to compete in the SEC in baseball. They're just not. They are not built the same. Though that team, although it's good offensively, most of the time, pitching wise, is not even close. And it's the proof is in the pudding, man. And David Pierce has an abysmal record against the SEC. You have to go back to 2022 to find a Texas win over an SEC school, and they actually were pretty good that year against the SEC. But that was kind of the outlier for David Pierce when it comes to playing the SEC schools. So the coaching turnover there has been ridiculous while he's been there. I mean, I think this is like the fourth pitching coach that LeBaron Johnson Jr. has had. Third for sure. The pitching staff, which is his baby this year because he was the pitching coach, was just not good enough. And the other thing, the baseball team is the only major men's sport at the University of Texas that CDC sort of hasn't put his stamp on. And I don't know how important that is to Chris Del Conte. I don't know him at all. I've never met him. But I do know he's put his stamp on football. He put his stamp on basketball. He had to rip the Band-Aid off and put another stamp on it, but he did it. Baseball, he hasn't done that yet. And the other thing for me, like, David Pierce just doesn't seem like a very good fit for the University of Texas. He's not a very personable guy. He almost at times just completely lacks emotion. I mean, I'm not a huge Tony Vitello guy, but I think at least he like is there with his team in the trenches. You can tell he gets emotional at times. I think he's a guy that players want to play for. So what's all that add up to, man? I think he's ultimately gone. I would be really surprised if David Pierce, and I know I just said I wouldn't be surprised. So I don't know why I'm saying now that I would be really surprised, but I don't think he's going to be the coach next year. I think they'll go out and find somebody. I think it's going to be maybe somebody under the radar. I think a name that's interesting, and I can't even remember his name, but the guy that coaches Louisiana, he's from Texas. And he's done some good stuff with that Louisiana Raging Cajuns or whatever the hell they are now. He's done a good job with that program, and he doesn't have near the resources that he would have at Texas. So I think maybe that's maybe an interesting possible candidate. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to be able to go pull a guy from Tennessee or pull a guy from A&M or pull a guy from Kentucky or pull somebody from. That just seems. It's always interesting to me. Texas fans, especially when you talk about baseball, we have like this overinflated sense of the program. And don't get me wrong, it's a really good program. It's definitely one of the blue blood programs. But I think if you're looking at today, a lot of these SEC programs have completely passed Texas in the last few years in terms of facilities, just like investment in the baseball programs, NIL money, things like that. They're just better places to be from a baseball perspective. So we'll see what happens with David Pierce. Baseball season is over for us. The Lady Longhorns were our last hope. Made it to their second College World Series final in the last 3 years and just could not get it done against a really, really good Oklahoma team. Everybody made such a big deal when Texas finally won that series again, because it had been like 15 years since Texas beat Oklahoma in Austin, I think, and some crazy ass number. I mean, I don't even remember like the trivia that came out of that series loss, but it was amazing. Like when I heard the announcers talking about it, I was like, holy shit, like that is phenomenal. And I'm talking about the OU program, like just what they have been able to do over that amount. I mean, it is insane. And so you kind of had to figure as this whole thing was winding down. To me, it's just one of those, yep, we beat them in the regular season. They're going to beat us in the final type of deals. And that's exactly what happened, man. I Texas cruised through the College World Series into the finals. Oklahoma kind of limped in a little bit. They got busted up by Florida and then, had another close game with Florida to advance. But here's the deal, y'all. And I said this to people. Oklahoma has won 3 of the last 3. They've run 3 national championships in a row. And so you just had to figure it's hard. That is some experience that I don't think people really appreciate, like how much that benefits that group. How much the fact that they had won the last 3 national championships benefited them in this series against Texas on that stage. I think they were there. They were comfortable with whatever happened because they had seen a lot of things happen on that stage, and Texas just wasn't ready for the big stage like they were. Now, I'm not saying Texas wasn't ready for the big stage. That's not what I'm trying to say. Don't hear me wrong. But they are nowhere close to ready the way that Oklahoma team was ready. And really nobody is. I think 4 in a row is the record now. I mean, think about that. The seniors on that softball team have never not won a national championship. That's really good, man. And so it was going to be a tough climb for that Texas softball team. And honestly, the pitching wasn't as good against Oklahoma in this series as it was in the Big 12 series. It certainly wasn't as good as it was up to that point in the College World Series. So the pitching didn't do well. Some of the fielding was not great. The offense wasn't. It was just kind of a overall, I don't want to say team letdown. But I don't think they played as well in this series against Oklahoma for the College World Series as they had leading up to that. But the good news is this team's got some good young players. I expect them to still be really tough next year as they head into the SEC. I think the coach there has got these girls headed down the right track, and the program is doing what it needs to do to be really highly successful. So congrats to the ladies. I know that wasn't the outcome you guys wanted, obviously, but really good season. I think for me, it just sucks losing that game to Oklahoma or losing that series to Oklahoma. Yeah, you just don't like if you're Texas, you don't want to lose to Oklahoma. You certainly don't want to lose a championship to Oklahoma. So, I am not a diehard softball person. Like I haven't watched every game. I'm not going to sit here and lie to y'all. I haven't. I've watched bits and pieces throughout the season. I watched the games this week, the championship series games, most of them anyway. So it doesn't hurt me as bad. And I know there's some people out there that are hurting real bad. And again, if you're a Texas fan, you just don't ever want to lose to Oklahoma, but it happens. It's the way it goes. So what do we do now, Texas fans? The baseball team's out. The softball team is out. Well, now we just have to wait, y'all. We just have to wait a few more months for college football, which is a damn shame. I've said this on this show before, man. This is like the worst part of the year from a sports perspective for me personally. And I realize everybody's not like this. I mean, here in another week or two, there's going to be nothing but professional baseball on. And I don't mind watching professional baseball, but I don't know. I just don't get into it like I do college baseball. The good news is, if you're a baseball fan, we still got some college baseball to go. 3 more weekends of college baseball. Super regionals are set. Let's break it down. Let's talk about these super regions. You got the Knoxville Super. You got Tennessee and Evansville. They're going right now. I say, despite the fact that Evansville to this point has kind of managed to stay in this game, I don't think they have any chance to beat to beat Tennessee and Knoxville. Tennessee is I think Tennessee's got to be the favorite to win it all, even though they probably won't because they're the overall 1 seed. Tallahassee Super, Florida State and UConn. I didn't realize this game was going to be that early. Florida State's super tough at home. And I said that UConn is going to have to bang really hard to win this game. And they absolutely didn't. Florida State absolutely did. I think the final score was 24-2 or 24, just an absolute ass kicking by Florida State there in that super regional game against UConn. Then we moved down to the Charlottesville Super, got Virginia and K-State. To me, we talked last week, me and Harge kind of talked about who did we think, the SEC has won 4 straight national championships, 4 straight College World Series. Is there anybody in this tournament field that can upset or sort of unseat the SEC? And for me, Virginia was one of those teams that I talked about. I think K-State, man, K-State's an interesting team, man. They can be pretty good at times. It'll be interesting to see. I have not got to see Virginia play hardly at all this season, but I have seen K-State play a little bit. It'll be interesting to see if K-State can maybe make some noise here. They did all right early on, especially in Big 12 play. I still think Virginia comes out of this super regional. Chapel Hill Super Regional, North Carolina and West Virginia. North Carolina was another one of those teams I talked about that I thought just kind of has the roster where they could go unseat the SEC, be one of those teams that could win the College World Series outside of the SEC. And they had a really, really tough battle with LSU. Kudos to LSU, man. They kind of backdoored themselves into the tournament. And by the way, my opinion is that they never should have been out of the tournament. I don't give a fuck what their SEC record was. They had a really good overall record, and they're the defending national champs. They play in the toughest conference. I don't see why that should be held against them. But the good news is they ran through the SEC tournament, had a really good tournament, and that got them in. got them up to a 2 seed. I mean, they went from, in 1 week of baseball, they went from probably not even going to be in the tournament to a 2 seed. So anyway, I know that's not what LSU wanted this year either, but that was pretty magical to watch them down the stretch, not only fight their way in, but they had a really good series, really good regional. And that final game they played against UNC was a really good one. Who would have thought K-State and West Virginia would have been the two teams repping the Big 12 in the Super Regional? If you said to start the tournament there'd be two teams from the Big 12 they're going to be in Super Regionals, I don't think anybody's saying K-State and West Virginia, but here we are. I think this is a tough one for West Virginia. I like UNC. Lexington Super Regional, you got Kentucky and Oregon State. Kentucky's got a good team, but I don't think they've ever won a Super Regional. And Oregon State has a history. You got the history there, man. They won a national championship. I believe it was 2018 against Arkansas, I believe. So I like Oregon State in this one. As a matter of fact, I think Oregon State was the last non-SEC team to win the College World Series. I think Oregon State goes into Lexington, upsets Kentucky. Athens Super Regional, you got Georgia and NC State. Georgia can hit a ton, but I think if NC State can keep them in the park, they got a chance. There in Athens. Clemson Super Regional, Clemson and Florida. Clemson was the other. So I talked about three teams that I thought could screw things up to keep that streak alive for the SEC. Clemson was the other one. Florida went on the road again. Florida was a team that a lot of people weren't sure was going to make it in to the NCAA tournament, and they did as a 3 seed. They were terrible in the SEC tournament, but they went into Stillwater and bounced back from an early loss and got it done. Florida's a dangerous team. And Caglione, Cags, whatever the hell you want to call him, that dude can smash a baseball. There's a lot of guys on that Florida team that can hit the baseball hard. But I like Clemson, man. I think Clemson will get it done. And then we got the College Station Super, Texas A&M and Oregon. Texas A&M got knocked out last year in the regionals by a Pac-12 team. I don't think they get knocked out of the tournament this year by a Pac-12 team. I got Texas A&M. So the picks are Tennessee, Florida State, Virginia, North Carolina, Oregon State, NC State, Clemson, and Texas A&M, folks. That is two SEC teams out of 11 this is just my picks. We'll see what happens. But really 6 out of the 5 were erased during the regional. So, I mean, there was a lot of people talking about how historic this year might be for, some guys said SEC's getting 6 teams in. And I just, man, that's nuts. I mean, they were set up to be able to do it, but it's just not going to ever happen. I'll be surprised if we ever see one conference get 6 teams to Omaha. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But there's my picks. I don't even know what's going on in this Tennessee game. Last I looked, they were up by a couple, and they were scoring in every inning. Show the damn score. We get it, man. You hit the ball. Now show the score. Anyway, we'll look up there in a minute. I'm pretty sure they're up. They're probably winning by like 30 now. Let's talk about this little off-topic thing. College coaching exodus. So we've had 2 major men's national title winning coaches leave for their respective pro league. And maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit on Dan Hurley, but I think he's going to be the Laker head coach if they haven't already named him. And Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. And a lot of people are going to say, well, this isn't new. And you're right, it's not. We've seen coaches do it before. We saw Nick Saban do it. We saw not Brian Kelly, but Chip Kelly do it. And there's 100 coaches that have done this. We're missing some. But I think the reasons why coaches might do it is starting to change. I think, to me, honestly, I think it used to be a lot about money. 20 years ago, college coaching salaries, they were good. I mean, I don't think any of those guys were complaining necessarily, but today it's just ridiculous. And I think it used to be about kind of testing yourself in the best league for your sport. Now college football coaches are making double-digit millions per year. College basketball, I went and looked up the college basketball salaries. Holy shit, man, they're making good. Like Dan Hurley was making $5 million a year at UConn, and he was like the, I don't know, maybe like the 8th or 9th highest paid coach in basketball. So there's a lot of money in basketball there too. I think today the reason these guys are doing it's just all the turmoil in collegiate athletics. I think it is slowly starting to dawn on these guys, and they're starting to realize that it's just not worth it anymore. And we've talked about this on the show before. Like, everybody wants to look at all these little, everybody looks at the transfer portal in a vacuum and says, yeah, it's the greatest thing ever, man. Now these guys control their own careers, which I don't think people that are against the transfer portal don't want these guys to be able to control their careers to some extent. So that's a fallacy, like right off the bat. You see it; it's very prevalent. If you're against X, or at least the current version of X, you don't want Y. Like, you just don't want these guys to. The same thing with NIL. I had a guy tell me today on a college football message board that indentured servitude. That's what college football used to be. That's what college athletics used to be, was indentured servitude. Really? Come on, man. And I do not have a problem with it. I absolutely think that if you are using my name, image, and likeness, I should get paid for that. Something. But we all know that's not what's happening today. We all know that NIL is not that. So if you're a coach of these, these big collegiate athletic programs, you got to recruit not only do you have to battle all these other college coaches to get your guys on your roster year one, but then you got to do it every year after that, because they can just jump ship anytime. And now the NCAA has said there's no limit on transfers. So, I mean, you're going to start seeing guys. It's fucking sad. You're going to start seeing guys like just jumping from team to team to team to team, chasing money. And to me, that just that's not college football. That is not amateur athletics, which is what college football and college sports are supposed to be. So yeah, they're having to recruit them to get on campus. They're having to recruit them forever, season after season after season, if they want them to stay. Then you got NIL. You got these kids coming out of high school with all these crazy expectations. Man, that dude sued Florida because it was insane. Millions of dollars that they supposedly agreed to pay this kid, and they called him and said they couldn't. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't have a grievance maybe against this booster, but I mean, the coaches aren't even supposed to be involved in NIL. The school is not supposed to be involved in NIL. Yet here we are, we're suing a coach over NIL. So they come out of high school with these nutso expectations, and then while the whole time they're there, all they seem to care about is their next check they can figure out a way to get. Nick Saban told a story after he retired that's all they talk about. The season's over. They don't come in and sit down with him and say, hey, what can I do to get better for next season? Or, what are your expectations? They don't do any of those things. He said all the conversations, like 90% of them, are, hey, man, I need to get some more money for next year. How much money can I get? Because if I can't get X amount, I'm going to go into the portal. And I know, again, people that speak negatively about that, other people are going to say, oh, you just don't care about the kids. You just don't want them to make any money. You want them to be a slave, basically. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it has become so much the big part of why these kids stay. Used to, kids went to a school and they wanted to be a Texas Longhorn, or they wanted to be a Florida Gator, or they wanted to be an Alabama Crimson Tide Elephant. Like that, they wanted that. They don't give a fuck about that anymore. All they care about is where can I get some money and how much can I get? You got to find a balance, man. That's what I'm saying. There has to be a balance. You got all this realignment that these coaches are having to deal with. All this now, the schools can pay the guys. It's just a mess, man. Like I would not want to do it. It is an absolute mess, and it is not worth it. When I was a kid, when I was younger, I say when I was a kid, when I was in high school, I wanted to be a coach. Like that's I had a ton of respect for my coaches. I thought that being a coach would be like the coolest job in the world. And of course, as I was thinking about that and planning it, I had like I had these goals to go be a college coach. I mean, I think being a college when I was 16, 17, 18, 19 even, being a head coach at a major college football program, I couldn't imagine anything better than that. I wouldn't do it now. Man, you could not pay me enough money to have to put up with all the shit that these dudes have to put up with. And so now these guys can just go to the NFL, get paid a ton. They don't have to recruit anybody. All they got to do is coach. They don't have to worry about are these guys going to classes because they're not in school. They don't have to worry about recruiting any of them because their GM's going to go out and draft them. They're going to go out in free agency, which, by the way, is it not absurd that in a professional sport, it is harder to move around than it is as an amateur, supposedly? I think that people overreacted to problems that were absolutely problems. I mean, you had the NCAA telling kids they couldn't transfer because they wanted to transfer closer to their family because they had a sick family. NCAA fucked this up for everybody. And then they just opened the floodgates. And they're kind of just probably sitting back and kind of going, you asked for it, here it is. How can we profit off of it? How can we remain relevant through all of this? But we're just going to go ahead and let you eat yourselves. That's what's happening right now. So if I'm a coach, I don't know how any of these college coaches, like, to me, it is an absolute young man's game now. There's no way these old bastards can keep up with this stuff forever. The way they would have to keep up with it to be successful. I ought to do a show just on how, I mean, it's ridiculous, man. Like, there is a happy medium. And what we should have done, I say we, the college football world should have done is figure that out instead of just going from 0 to 100 and sitting back and going, hey, there it is. And y'all know what's coming next. There's going to be high school players. They're going to piss and moan enough. They're going to say, man, I show up to a stadium and it's sold out. Nobody goes to these games, but I show up and everybody comes. People come from 3 cities or over to come watch me play. I need some money. I need part of that gate. It's going to happen. I'm telling y'all. It is going to trickle down and trickle down and trickle down. And it's going to be a joke. And the sports that we love so much growing up as kids are going to be unrecognizable. And that's a damn shame. And that's the show for the week. We'll be back next week. We got to start talking about football, man. I got to start writing down a list of some stuff to talk about. We're a long way out. But we got to start having some Texas football talk, some Texas to the SEC talk. What do we think is going to happen in the 2024 football season? You guys email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your questions, comments, concerns, and criticisms. Thanks for listening today. Hope you enjoyed the show. Give us a subscribe. Give us a like. All that kind of stuff. You guys have a good one. Y'all get hooked.